The desert behind the Duster's trail wasn't empty. It was a cemetery disguised as sand. Lena, Jax, and Seth ran the pursuit in tight, low formation, motorcycles kicking up twin plumes of dust that the tailwind refused to swallow. The world became a narrow tunnel of heat, roar, and the faint metallic glint of the tide-marked truck ahead. "They're leading us," Jax shouted, nearly lost to the wind. "Or they're trying to lose us." "Either way," Lena replied, eyes locked on the fleeing silhouette. "We need to see where they go." Seth drove hard beside her, jaw tight, knuckles pale on the handlebars. The colored tide mark on the Duster's side had sent knives through everything he thought he knew. He swore under his breath, eyes shining with the kind of rage that came from learning his own name had been turned into a weapon. They chased the Dusters past the ruins of a collapsed interchange, where rebar stuck out from concrete like broken ribs. The road ahead narrowed, winding into a dry riverbed flanked by rock outcrops. Lena's eyes narrowed. "There," she said, pointing. "They're turning in hard." The truck had veered off-road, tires throwing a storm of dust and loose gravel, driving toward a low crater where the ground looked less solid. Jax cut in first. "We're going in, but we're staying out of sight." The engines cut as they reached the cover of the rocks. They parked behind an overhang, the three bikes dwarfed by the bone-white cliffs above. The air tasted like ground chalk. Lena climbed out first, rifle ready, scanning the open space where the Duster truck had disappeared. Jax followed, crouched low, binoculars already in hand. Seth stayed near the bikes, scanning the rock wall behind for vantage points. The wind whipped dust into eddies, making the world dance. "Truck stopped," Jax murmured, adjusting the focus. "Can't see the markings yet, but the plume stopped moving. Camp's forming around it." Lena squinted. "They're probably setting it up like a decoy, while the real cargo goes somewhere else." "I'm more worried about the supplies," Seth said. "If the Dusters are raiding both sides, they're hoarding water faster than either faction can. The drought on the coast will be worse than we thought." "Then we follow the convoy, not the smoke," Lena replied. "We need to know where the hidden tanks are." Jax turned to them, the creases on his brow deepening. "And if we're wrong, the tide could be the first to march on Harborline before the Dusters even show their real hand." They moved toward the rock line, shadows clinging to them like armor. The Dusters' camp sprawled in the crater, makeshift tents of canvas and tarps, fires burning low, engines idling. The tide-marked truck sat at the center, surrounded by men moving with a strange, practiced routine. Lena picked a thin overhang, crawling low, rifle held ready. Jax flanked her, moving in quiet, calculated steps, while Seth stayed back, keeping an eye on their escape route. The perimeter guards paced in lazy circles, rifles slung low, but restless. "3 on the truck," Jax whispered. "The one with the bandana seems to be giving orders." Lena narrowed her eyes. The truck's markings were precise, not scribbled, as if the false flag had been applied with care. The man barking orders gestured toward the truck, toward the hill, toward the horizon. Decision-making, not randomness. "This isn't a scavenger point," she whispered. "It's a coordination post." The realization slid between them like a cold blade. The tide wasn't just a lie they'd stumbled onto. It was a system. Jax crept closer to the crater's edge, Lena following, both keeping their weapons low. Seth's eyes danced between the wall, the truck, and the horizon. The tension gnawed at the air. Suddenly, the man with the bandana raised his hand, then pointed directly at the rock face, toward their hiding spot. The other 2 Dusters spun. Lena swore, "Move now." They scrambled back, boots crunching on loose gravel. One of the Dusters fired a wild shot into the air, then another, calling out in the rough, guttural tongue of the road. The camp stirred, engines roaring. Jax planted himself on a low ledge, snapping off a controlled shot that clipped one of the running Dusters in the shoulder. The man yelped, doubling over, but the truck's driver lurched forward, engine revving. "They're going to roll," Seth shouted. "If we don't stop them now, we lose the trail." Lena took a breath, steadying her rifle. "Then we stopped the truck." The chase resumed in earnest, the 3 of them hot on the Duster's tail, engines roaring, the landscape blurring into a blur of ochre and dust. The truck veered wildly through the cracked earth, dodging boulders, skidding on loose gravel, but the road behind them was a mess of tire tracks. They cut across a narrow ridge and Lena saw it, the first real water tanker, hidden behind a rock outcrop, tanks glinting under the sun, connected by a network of pipes and hoses to the truck. The dusters were siphoning directly from a hidden aquifer point, filling the tanks with something much cleaner than anything either the Tide or Harborline would admit to using. The duster driver's eyes widened as he saw the trucks, realization dawning. He braked sharply, the truck slewing sideways, spilling dusty fuel onto the ground. The truck's side door swung open, revealing a man with a rifle, dressed in duster gear but with a faint wave and triangle tattoo on his neck where his collar had slipped. Lena's eyes locked on Seth's. The connection was undeniable. The Tide had infiltrated the dusters. "Cole didn't send this," Seth said, disgust sharpening his voice. "This is bigger than him." The duster man raised his rifle, but before he could fire, Jax's shot rang out, dropping him into the dust. The truck shuddered to a halt. Lena stepped forward, followed by Seth, the tension between them crackling. The isolated tanker, the aquifer, the contract, everything now felt like a web of lies waiting to be cut. By the time the three of them reached the top of the ridge, the duster convoy had vanished into the horizon, leaving only a faint smear of dust. The air tasted of iron and dust, and the horizon shimmered with the heat of the approaching sun. Lena stood at the edge of the ridge, the tanker and aquifer visible behind them like a secret she now had to carry. Jax approached her, his boots crunching on the loose gravel. Seth's breath was heavy, his eyes fixed on the aquifer, as if he could see the veins of deceit beneath the surface. "This is what the Tide doesn't want anyone to know," Lena said. "The water's not as scarce as the factions say. They're hoarding it, manipulating the drought, and using the dusters and the wars to keep everyone divided." Seth's face twisted with anger and betrayal. "If this gets out, the Tide's already lost. This is a war we're fighting for control, not for survival." Lena placed a hand on his shoulder, the gesture heavy. "Then we decide how to use it." Back at Harborline, the council reacted with a mix of fear and disbelief when Lena and Jax returned, the aquifer information and the false flag lie etched into their expressions. Seth stood a little apart, the mark of the Tide tattoo on his neck faint but present. Seth's loyalty was tested, but Lena trusted him for now. The weeks that followed moved in a blur of tension and careful planning. The Tide's secret was exposed, the water crisis laid bare, and the factions began to question the lies they'd been told. Lena stood at the edge of Harborline's wall again, the sun dipping low, painting the horizon in hues of gold and dust. Jax came to stand beside her, Seth a respectful distance away. "You know what this means," Jax said softly. "The Tide is coming for us now that the lie is broken." Lena nodded, her gaze steady. "But we've got the truth on our side this time. And if the Tide wants war, we'll give them something to think about." The Season 1 finale of Resource Wars ended with the Tide turning in the sands of doubt, the factions forced to choose between unity and chaos. The question now was what would come next, peace, or the war the factions had spent so long preparing for.